Hello, hello, and welcome. Thanks for joining me. A second quick broadcast from me today. I just came across this footage of police in St. Petersburg just arresting multiple men on the street, apparently on New Year's Eve. Russian media called it prophylactic raids for law violators. Prophylactic, synonymous with preventative, really. You use prophylactics to prevent venereal disease, and these are prophylactic raids. So the footage is just remarkable, and I wanted to share it with whoever's watching on the internet as a potent reminder of why you should resist fascism while you can. Resist the consolidation of power amongst the elite, even if you think your values align with them, even if you think, oh, Russia's so great, they've got a strong man in charge who really knows what he wants and isn't afraid to go for it. And he supports Christianity, and he supports heterosexuality and the sacrosanctness of heterosexual marriage. If you feel like that towards Russia, if you feel yourself tempted to excuse or minimize their crimes against humanity, have a watch of this footage. And they're just collecting some men across the street. It's presumably for a last militaristic push, and this is a way to conscript men of army joining age. Make it bigger so people can see. It's got this unnerving Russian music in the background. You can see the holidaymakers. There's footage of people with microphones. There's a man in military fatigues just running for no apparent reason. Oh, then we get to the more contentious footage here. A man being held up against more men being kicked and attacked. And there's no obvious reason. There's a man in normal street attire. I just want people to see, because it can be very easy to fall into a complacency, and our silence around the activities of Russia contributes to an environment in which Republicans will find it easier to strip funding from Ukraine. Now, I'm sure everybody knows America has a large military budget, and some of its obsolescing materials, some of its equipment that's becoming out of date has been donated to Ukraine. And people describe that with a dollar amount, but it doesn't mean just buckets of cash are being handed over. There is some cash, some financial assistance, but a lot of the assistance comes in terms of handing over military equipment to this country, which is an American ally. Ukraine is an ally to the United States, and Russia is a hostile adversary. Some people don't get that, because Donald Trump certainly promoted Vladimir Putin as being his friend, although he would periodically claim to be really tough, someone who frightened Vladimir Putin as well, all of which was very patently untrue to anybody who took a close look at what was happening. You'd have to be pretty adept at ignoring the nose on your face to ignore Trump's palpable obsequiousness to Putin at Helsinki, for example. So that was men being taken off the street. They were on the street to celebrate New Year's Eve, but that's a dangerous thing to do in St. Petersburg, evidently, this New Year's Eve, because of Putin's desire to snatch some kind of military victory from the jaws of defeat in Ukraine. He didn't have a good plan. He didn't anticipate strong opposition. All right, let's get that out of the way. So yes, very important to actually think about what Russia has been doing to the people of Ukraine in terms of attempted genocide, attacking their infrastructure to leave people without heat during winter, without heat, without electricity, without the ability to cook food using gas or electricity, just forcing hardship on the people of Ukraine to try to break their spirit and break their resolve to defend their nation from the depredations of a hostile adversarial army sent by Putin and his cohort to conquer, to acquire the lands, the resources, and the children and the people of Ukraine. A lot of Ukrainian children have been sent to Russia, separated from their family members and adopted into Russian families or sent to Russian military training schools for young people, and in an effort to demoralize both those children on an individual level and their families and a broader level, and the Ukrainian people more generally. So bravo to the spirit of the Ukrainian people in the firmness of their resolve to defend their homeland, their people, their culture, their language, their independence from Russia under this hostile takeover effort from Putin and co. And congratulations to Joe Biden, President Joe Biden, who has led the fortification of international resolve to oppose Putin's aggression, Putin's resolve to inflict war on innocent humans. I'm going to look up Hakeem Jeffries because I promised to share something earlier, which was Hakeem's speech. So I'm going to look up videos and his A to Z speech. Let's see if this has any of that content right now, but it's still a good speech, even without the A to Z poem that he constructed and delivered.
But I also want to make clear that we will never compromise our principles. House Democrats, but I also want to make clear that we will never compromise our principles. House Democrats will always put American values over autocracy, benevolence over bigotry, the Constitution over the cult, democracy over demagogues, economic opportunity over extremism, freedom over fascism, governing over gaslighting, hopefulness over hatred, inclusion over isolation, justice over judicial overreach, knowledge over kangaroo courts, liberty over limitation, maturity over Mar-a-Lago, normalcy over negativity, opportunity over obstruction, people over politics, quality of life issues over QAnon, reason over racism, substance over slander, triumph over tyranny, understanding over ugliness, voting rights over voter suppression, working families over the well-connected, xenial over xenophobia, yes we can over you can't do it, and zealous representation over zero-sum confrontation. We will always do the right thing by the American people.
I don't understand his X reference where he says xenio over xenophobia. So if anybody knows that, feel free to message me and fill me in. Oh, somebody who follows the climate crisis is now following me on Mastodon, which is good. Mastodon is my safety net because of Elon Musk's potent efforts to twist Twitter into a predominantly disinformation sharing site by foregrounding his efforts to misinform the public, the Twitter files, whereby he gets his complicit journalist buddies who are loyal to Russia, who are loyal to Putin's desired framing, and who say things like, look at government agencies getting concerned about disinformation and asking Twitter to take certain disinformation accounts down. And they're asking it, they're not demanding it. The government doesn't have control of the private company of Twitter. And there was an insurrection on January the 6th, which heightened the need to take down those accounts that were inciting violence, like Donald Trump. Even if he did include the words peacefully and respectfully periodically in his violent inciting speeches, he told his followers what he wanted from them. He said, you'll never keep our country through weakness, you have to fight. He was clear in his messaging about the need to fight. And it wasn't a rhetorical description of fighting through the court system, because he'd already done that and lost. It wasn't a rhetorical description of the need to fight by turning out to vote, because that had already happened and he'd lost. When he urged his followers to fight, he wasn't asking them to sign petitions or to join school boards. He was telling the January 6th rally attendees to go and fight that day in that location. And he was clear in his anger with Mike Pence, his vice president, who failed to advance one plank of his plan to overthrow government, which was to delay the certification of Biden's Electoral College victory. To just not bang his little gavel and say, perform his duties to say, I'm the vice president, done, counted, certified. Trump just needed that part of the process to be delayed, because it's constitutionally stipulated that process should occur on January the 6th. That is the date to certify the election results. And once that date stipulation was violated, they hoped to then succeed in saying that the election results were so contentious that constitutional provision had been violated, and now they had to move on to the other provision in the Constitution, which says if a clear victor is not established, then the election results have to be thrown to the House of Representatives, with one delegate from each state voting for a presidential candidate, in which case the Republicans would have had 26 delegates out of a potential 50, and Donald Trump would have won this secondary sham election. And I try to make that clear to people who are likely unfamiliar with that provision in the Constitution, because it's certainly under discussed that all Donald Trump needed was a delay, so that people can appreciate how close the insurrectionists came to success, and only the resolve of Nancy Pelosi and even Mike Pence on that day to come back, to continue the process, the formalized certification process of the official proceedings of the Senate and the House, until late that night. Early, was it done before 12 o'clock? Must have been, because they got it done that day. They managed to adhere to the constitutional provision that Electoral College votes be certified on the day of January the 6th. Because the plotters, the coup plotters, just had that intention of disrupting things to then justify further disruption. They were going to break that date and say that proceedings did not occur on January the 6th, therefore the next provision has been activated. That election result is now contentious. It was not certified on January the 6th. We go to this provision. And the Republicans had, if you only count one delegate per state, they had then a majority, and Donald Trump would have won those votes if that system had been activated. I've got a little pocket copy of the Constitution. I sometimes get it out and read out loud from that particular provision. But I might see if I can just bring it up on the internet right now. Okay, here we go, the 12th Amendment. I can share this part of the Constitution from a website which I probably don't agree with, because it's probably a conservative website, but they're at least reliably recounting the 12th Amendment. Okay, so with the exception of 2 states, after a federal election, all electors in each state are awarded to the candidate with the most popular votes. With the most popular votes, that's tautology, with the most votes, with a majority of the vote. So their sentence there is poorly constructed. But in turn, the electors of all states meet as a group or college at selected locations in December within each state to cast their votes. If a candidate has at least 270 electoral votes, they are declared the winner of the presidential election. If not, Congress can decide the issue under the 12th Amendment in a contingent election held after the newly elected Congress is seated in office. So on January the 6th, the newly elected Congress seated in office, and here we go. We've got the 12th Amendment, the actual language. The president of the Senate, who was Mike Pence on the day of January the 6th, because the vice president is deemed to be the president of the Senate. So the president of the Senate shall, in the presence of the Senate and the House of Representatives, open all the certificates, and the votes shall then be counted. The person having the greatest number of votes for president shall be the president, if such number be a majority of the whole number of electors appointed. And if no person have such majority, then from the persons having the highest numbers, not exceeding 3, on the list of those voted for as president, the House of Representatives shall choose immediately by ballot the president. But in choosing the president, the votes shall be taken by states, the representation from each state having 1 vote. Having 1 vote from each state. So even though Democrats had a majority in the House of Representatives, the Republicans would have a majority if it was 1 delegate from each state. And I'm now opening up the page that has crossed straight to recounting the language of the 12th Amendment. And this is the passage I just read aloud. The representation from each state having 1 vote. Okay. So that is the passage of the 12th Amendment that Donald Trump and his co-conspirators were hoping to activate by virtue of delaying the official proceedings of the certification of Joe Biden's Electoral College victory. His election victory, his Electoral College victory, he obtained over 270 votes. He obtained 302 Electoral College votes, if I remember correctly, and he won the election. And Donald Trump hoped to overthrow that occurrence, that circumstance of Biden having won and himself having lost, by using a mixture of his supporters delaying that certification by driving the legislators out of their chambers, because that part of the 12th Amendment stipulates that the president of the Senate, who was at the time Mike Pence, has to do it in the presence of the Senate and the House of Representatives. So Trump's supporters were there to drive those representatives and those senators out of the building. I mean, some people had a plan to drive them to wait until they were in the tunnels and then turn on the gas, and so cause the death of the entire legislative body of the United States Congress. But really, all Trump had to do as a plan then was incite enough people to attend the Capitol to disrupt the proceedings. And he could have still called it peaceful protest. Nobody even had to die. Nobody even had to take hostage. People did have to be in fear for their life enough to flee the building. Because once they fled the building, and the president of the Senate at the time, Mike Pence, could not, in the presence of the House of Representatives and the Senate, open the certificates and count the Electoral College votes and determine that Joe Biden had won the greatest number of these and was to be the president, then he hoped to activate this portion of the 12th Amendment of the Constitution and say, this is all valid. This is now a contingent election. The House of Representatives shall choose immediately by ballot the president, but in choosing the president, the votes shall be taken by states, the representation from each state having 1 vote. Hi, Alexandra. Nice to see you. I would love it if mainstream media would cover this portion of the 12th Amendment so that people understood exactly how January the 6th could work. Because if they don't understand it, they just go, oh yeah, well, they were there, they were hillbillies. It's more readily dismissed that it was a serious coup attempt. They're like, yeah, they didn't try to overthrow the government. They couldn't do anything. They just, yeah, maybe they pooped on the walls. Maybe it was disrespectful, but it was just a few people. They were just hillbillies. It doesn't matter who they were. They were hillbillies. Some of them were business owners. They had a relatively high incidence of debt and default amongst the people who've been arrested and tried. There were people with a high level of grievance against the system. And Trump was the anti-system candidate. He was the contrarian president who promised to overthrow politics as normal. So the public really does need to understand. It's just been the second anniversary of January the 6th, and this has been insufficiently explained to people, that all they needed to do was block it for a day, because it's constitutionally mandated that January the 6th is to be the day for confirming the election victory. And if that process is not followed, then there was a case that the Trump supporters were arguing that now the 12th Amendment could be activated, and the contingent election, whereby one delegate from each state in the House of Representatives immediately by ballot selects a president. And that Republicans control 26 states, even though in absolute numbers of representatives on any normal day, the Democrats have a majority in the House of Representatives, that if you just reduce it to one delegate per state, then you have a Republican majority. And therefore, if you have activated a contingent election with one delegate casting one ballot for a chosen presidential candidate, that Trump is able to obtain a contingent election victory in that way, and so overthrow the results of the legitimate results of the 2020 presidential election, and have enough plausible deniability to claim that he has achieved a constitutionally sanctioned presidential victory. So I'm just really keen to spread that word. I'll make a shorter video about it, perhaps. Maybe this is a TikTok or a YouTube short message. I need people to know, and I wish I'd worked harder before the anniversary of January 6th to spread this message, although God knows I've mentioned it a lot on my broadcast channel. But yeah, Alexandra's got a pro-truth pledge. That's lovely. Truth is definitely something that needs to drive us forward in context of a recognition that lies destabilize a country. Those who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities. Brazil is demonstrating that. January the 6th demonstrated that. There are people who are willing to support atrocities as well. Those who choose to deny or ignore that Ashley Babbitt was part of a violent mob trying to breach the sanctum of the House of Representatives to harm legislators, that she was trying to climb through a broken window in the moment where she was shot in the neck by a police officer in the Capitol building on the day of January the 6th, that she was not a martyr. She was a Trump supporter who chose violence that day. She climbed on someone's shoulders, and I've seen the video footage of that event. I've seen the bang. I saw the hand with a gun on the other side of these locked doors that people were smashing the glass panes of. And people called out that there was a gun. She still chose to try to climb through a broken window to get to the legislators who were fleeing on the other side of that window to safety. And I've listened to Ashley Babbitt's recorded speeches as well, in which she's in her car complaining about the border, highlighting the power of the human imagination to get whipped up on a diet of lies into flaming irrational anger. And she was very angry, and that anger was impelling her forwards to commit crimes. And that's all from me today. Thank you for listening. Don't forget, spread the word about the 12th Amendment. If you have a pocket copy of the Constitution, look it up for yourself. Pardon me. And never forget that coup effort came very close to succeeding, and that it is the stand taken by decent people, even those Republicans, such as Republicans who I don't personally like the politics of. Secretary of State in Georgia, Brad Raffensperger, who took the call from Trump that asked him to find 11,780 votes. To say there's a counting problem, asked Donald Trump. He made lots of calls to try and persuade people to violate their conscience, to violate the law, to violate America's election integrity, and declare him the winner of states where he lost the popular vote, in order to snatch victory from the jaws of actual defeat, and so maintain an illegitimate grip on power. And I will point to his illegitimate election win in 2016. I didn't march to the Capitol to try and overthrow his illegitimate election win, but I did try to point it out that it is illegal to knowingly accept help from a foreign government. And when Trump was in office, he was protected by the reluctance of the special prosecutor, Robert Mueller, to prosecute a sitting president, and to be even clear about the likely crimes committed by a sitting president, knowing that Donald Trump would not be able to go to court to defend himself against such accusations because of Robert Mueller's decision that an Office of Legal Counsel memo from 1974 stipulating that a sitting president should not be prosecuted. He's like, okay, according to this memo, can't prosecute a sitting president. Therefore, I, as special prosecutor right now, will not even highlight that Trump has likely committed crimes because he cannot fairly defend himself in court at the moment, because I will not prosecute him. And that was the betrayal of Robert Mueller, and it's often the betrayal of people who give powerful white men a pass. Yes, two-tiered legal system for sure. White wealth privilege, or just wealth privilege, can distort the proper functioning of a legal system and the rule of law. But hey, nothing's perfect. That happened, and we are still dealing with the fallout. As a consequence, we're still, it's the nature of humanity. We've got to deal every day with the fallout of our human failings and our tendencies to cave to in-group loyalties, even if the in-group is constructed on something as flimsy and as ridiculous as skin color. So thank you, As. I hope I feel better soon too. You also say that it's important for average Americans, many of whom are disgusted and frustrated by the dysfunction in Congress, to understand fully what the 12th Amendment calls for and how it can be used. Yes, many of whom are frustrated and demoralized because they don't understand that the construction of America's democracy as a democratic republic was done with some inbuilt concessions to rural power, because at the time rural power was building wealth through enslavement, through an economy based on profiteering on the back of enslavement, and was complicit with religion providing rationalizations for enslaving others of dark skin color. And so providing false rationalizations that white people were inherently superior to black people, and therefore slavery of stolen African Americans was justified. So religious rationalizations propped up that economic practice of huge profiteering from agricultural profits. So not only cotton planting and picking, but adjacent industries that profited from the low costs of labor when your labor force is coerced, brutal product of slavery. And that that wealth brought with it political deference through the actions of multiple founding fathers who at the time built in concessions to those powerful, wealthy enslavers, so that the electoral college system promised to put a thumb on the scale for little states that were little in the sense of a population sense, a voting population sense. They had fewer voters than they had enslaved laborers. So they wanted to make sure that those people who supported slavery felt confident to sign on to the Constitution, because they would have an inflated, their votes would have an inflated weight in a presidential election because of through the workings of the electoral college system, which would assign votes to every state in an electoral college system of assigning numbers of votes. So you don't just have a popular vote who got the most votes for the president, you have who got the most votes in each state, and there's an arbitrary number. It's not entirely arbitrary. Ostensibly, it is weighted by population, but it wasn't just weighted by population. It's weighted an additional weight for the little states. Only they're not little. They had relatively large wealth. They were relatively welded to the practice of deriving profit from brutality. They had a might is right deference paid to them. Those people with such wealth that it was contributing significantly to America's geopolitical standing in the world. America was so wealthy on the back of their ability to profit from slavery. And so the founding fathers helped entrench that dynamic of deference to the wealth, the wealthiness, and the political will of enslavers, who, in order to perpetuate that system of slavery, the legality of the system of slavery, needed to have that reassurance and that reality of a disproportionate thumb on the scale of American democracy, so that it couldn't function by popular vote. So you had to have little states with disproportionately large, brutally acquired wealth. I hope that makes sense. And that is why people get frustrated, because they don't understand why American politicians don't always operate according to the will of the people. And that is because the expression of the will of the people through American politics is distorted by the lingering impact of those mechanisms built in American politics to give weight to the descendants of enslavers, to those who still live in those states, which have an outsized impact on federal elections through the mechanisms of the electoral college system, a system instituted to reassure, to capitulate to compromise with the wishes of wealthy, the acquirers of brutally acquired wealth, the possessors of brutally acquired wealth. Brute force wealth. There you go. I do have the advantage of being an outsider. Thank you, Alexandra. I love to characterize that as an advantage and not to just feel embarrassed that I am a non-American lecturing to Americans. I'm American in the sense that I live here now. I've moved here. I suffer significant guilt from exposing my children to the risks of living in America, being a child in America, whereby gun proliferation has contributed to gun deaths, gun violence now being the largest cause of death for American children. So I do feel guilty about that. But my husband has a job here as well. I derive, I think, $66 Australian dollars a month from those who still support my account through Patreon, which I thank you. I should mention my supporters more often. I felt so guilty for a while, I couldn't even bear to look at Patreon to see if people were still contributing money, but amazingly they are. Thank you. I don't depend on it as a source of income, but it is validating as a broadcaster to say people listen and people put their money, small dollar amounts, where their confidence lies, that they have confidence in my messaging and my interest, my curiosity in the facts of the matter about why American politics works as it does and what we can do to put pressure on it to continue to work for the people rather than against the interests of the people. How we can overcome the lethargy of the status quo, to use our human ingenuity, human empathy to address the problems that present themselves to us in this era. The problem of the climate crisis and the problem of fascism, the style of exploiting racism and xenophobic tendencies to cause division, to deflect from corruption and theft by various ruling elites or powerful elites such as Donald Trump, Robert Mercer, Charles Koch, Peter Thiel, do I pronounce it Thiel? Peter Thiel, even Elon Musk, who has benefited from billions of dollars of government subsidies to his companies and has contracts with American government agencies like for his rocket ships, but who panders to Vladimir Putin's perspective, who undermines American democracy by restoring the accounts of people who were working on sedition, who were working to overthrow popular government in America in 2021. Even today, Elon Musk has restored the account of Ali Alexander, one of the co-conspirators of the January 6th attempted coup. So, yes. Bob says, oh, this is a nice comment. I'd put you up against any American on debating about our and now yours country on our history and politics. Bless your heart, Bob. I love you for that comment. I cherish it. And Alexandra's got to go. Me too. She says, I'm an extremely valuable voice in this entire national dialogue. Must go. Thank you and keep up the good work. I cherish both of your comments and I will take a photo so that I remember it. And we all have to become efficient at collecting and retaining the things that give us power and strength. And your comments and your voices power my voice. So I thank you so much for expressing those sentiments. Take care. All the best. Bye-bye. Bob says that because even though you grew up here, I teach you all the time. That's wonderful. Awesome, Bob. I'm so happy and proud to be one of the people contributing to your curiosity, to the satisfaction of your curiosity and your growing knowledge about your own country and your own political system. Cheers. Bye.